Welcome to this third installment of America with an Accent dedicated to immigration. At least 3/4 of 44 million immigrants currently in the United States have completed or are under the process of applying for a green card with the final goal of becoming a naturalized citizen of the United States of America. How does the system work? Who is eligible? Where can one file the application? How much does it cost? And what happens behind doors? We would like to thank here USCIS administration as William Connor, the director of USCIS Omaha Field Office, and lawyers Tiara Godinez and Anna Deal with the Immigrant Legal Center, our partner in this series, walk us through the process of obtaining the green card and proudly become a naturalized citizen of the United States of America.
The following people have been examined by an officer of the United States in Citizenship and Immigration Services and have been found eligible for citizenship upon taking the required oath of allegiance. These 31 people from 17 different countries have been found to have the knowledge and understanding of the English language and the history and government of the United States. The government now moves that these people be admitted to citizenship upon taking the required oath of allegiance and the name changes requested be granted.
My name is Yusuf Al-Bideri, but I did today like my name change, so it's gonna be Yusuf Shileba. We are from Iraq. The city is Baghdad.
Shaishi. You can call me Shirley. It's much easier. Yeah, I know.
Where are you from, Shirley?
I'm original from China, but I have been here for 30 years.
My name is Hagos Gavrazgaviar Woldegargas, Ethiopia, East of Africa. I'm so excited. I'm happy.
But what is the road to this day? United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS Omaha Field Office, serves the state of Nebraska, and the director, William Connor, walks us through the steps.
Well, specifically, we're talking about adjustment of status, which is a form I-485. That form, basically, you're going from one type of status in the United States, whether it be a visitor for pleasure, or somebody on an employment visa or some other status, and you're trying to transition into lawful permanent residency, a green card holder. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to the USCIS website and you're going to want to find out, are you eligible to become a permanent resident? Because if you're not legally eligible, there's really not a reason to spend that kind of money to put that in. So if you go to uscis.gov, you have green card. Learn about green cards, apply for a green card. You'd want to go to apply for a green card, and then how to apply. Number one is, are you eligible? Okay, so there's a lot of different categories.
Attorneys Tiara Godinez and Anna Deal with the Immigrant Legal Center list some of the categories.
Lawful permanent residents may come via humanitarian-based forms of release. So I can tell you, for example, if someone comes to the United States as a refugee, right? Once they're physically present in the United States for a year, they can then apply for a green card, but they have to wait that one year before they could submit that. It's called an adjustment of status application to adjust their status from a refugee to a lawful permanent resident or green card holder.
If an individual enters with a visitor visa and falls in love while they're here vacationing, or maybe they come on a student visa and fall in love while they're in school with a U.S. citizen, that U.S. citizen could petition for the foreign national spouse, and then the foreign national spouse in most circumstances would be able to apply to adjust status, the same process, adjusting from temporary visa to a lawful permanent resident or green card status, based on the spousal relationship.
So, and that's family-based immigration,
That
is
would
that
be
right?
family-based.
Is it the same for employment-based immigration as well?
Just very basically, there's a mechanism for an employer to petition for a green card, for lawful permanent resident status for an employee. There are a bunch of different steps. The employer has to demonstrate that there are no qualified U.S. citizens available to do the job.
My understanding is that under the fourth category, the green card, the diversity lottery, that there's no much weight there, just because by default you were brought with a green card application here. Requirements for each category are listed on the website.
And then where you would go from there is you have adjustment of status inside the United States, and then you have adjustment of status outside of the United States, which is consular processing. Primarily, we're going to talk about adjustment of status inside of the United States today. So if you click on the actual Form I-45 application to register as a permanent resident or adjust status, it will bring up, it has a PDF fillable form that you can actually go on the computer and fill this out. It's also got the instructions. The instructions are vitally important that you read the instructions thoroughly, because that's going to tell you where you're sending the application to, how much you're going to need to pay. And then where to file is down here, and some of this is also on the website. So if you click on where to file, it will tell you that it depends on the eligibility category, and you can click on the direct filing addresses. So most commonly, like what we were talking about is like a spouse of a U.S. citizen.
The Form I-130, yes.
Yes. Say they may have an I-130 already approved and they're filing a 45, or they may be able to file it in conjunction with the 45 at the same time. Those applications would be mailed to the Chicago Lockbox, as we call it, which is a USCIS PO box if it's by mail, and then it's this address down here if it's FedEx, UPS, or DHL deliveries.
Yes.
And then you'd want to find out how much am I paying for this form. The filing fee is right here. And we have these categories. So if you're under 14 or 79 or older, you don't pay a biometrics fee, which is for fingerprinting biometric checks.
Okay.
But the general cost of the application is $1,140 for just the I-45 application. But then when you tack on the $85, it increases.
Okay.
And then if you're filing the I-130 in conjunction, you have to pay the I-130 fee also.
Yeah,
And then we have the fee calculator, where you can actually use this. It's a new tool that we have. And you would select the form, and we're talking about 45, and provide your age, because it's age dependent, family based, immediate relative of a U.S. citizen, and then you would calculate the fee. So that makes it kind of easy, because that's always been something that people get confused with, is actually how much money do they send in with multiple applications.
We work at a nonprofit that provides free immigration legal services for people who qualify based on being low income. So the majority of our clients, if there is a fee waiver available for the application type that they're pursuing, will qualify for a fee waiver.
Do you have a number? How much does it cost a regular person who doesn't have the benefit of a waiver and needs to hire an attorney to do the process? How much can that cost a person?
So it could be tens of thousands of dollars, right? Because, and it might depend on the underlying form of relief available. Types of applications that pen for an extended period of time, well, if they have an attorney every step of the way, it could add up to tens of thousands of dollars.
The next step is you would mail it in to the lockbox that's appropriate for your type of application.
Okay.
Like I said, you really have to read the instructions and use the website to figure out which lockbox or which location you need to send the file to.
Because it's not only one center that handles it.
Yeah.
They're different offices designated for that purpose. Okay.
And so with the 45, you would mail it in with the fees, check, money order. It's got to be to Department of Homeland Security, and those are sent to the lockbox. And that's where it starts. And the initial checks are actually done at the lockbox where the application is received. Then it's shipped to a service center.
So this is where you come into place, your office. Is that right?
No, we're not a service center. We're a field office here in Omaha.
Yes.
A service center, there's several around the country, and then there's also the National Benefits Center. The National Benefits Center is in Kansas City, Missouri. You have the Lincoln Service Center, or the Nebraska Service Center, which is in Lincoln, Nebraska. And then you have the Eastern Service Center in Vermont, the California Service Center in Laguna Niguel, California, and then you have a service center in Dallas, Texas.
All right.
And we also have a Potomac Service Center near Washington, D.C. These service centers do different types of applications. So then after the lockbox, the application is received at the service center. And that's where the initial vetting and checks are done and sorting of the file and getting it prepped for the interview process, which is at the field office.
Okay, so that file then is sent to your office here in Omaha. That's since we're here in Omaha, is that right?
Yeah.
From there?
After all the initial security checks and everything are complete, the file will be shipped to the Omaha field office if the applicant lives in our jurisdiction. We receive the file, and then the Omaha field office will schedule you for an interview.
Interview.
Okay. The applicant will receive that notification via mail
Yes.
with their date and time of their interview.
Okay.
And then they'll bring that notice to the Omaha field office, which will allow them to get through security. And they do need proper identification to get into the building. So then they would come into the building. We have a very nice facility here. They'd sit, wait in the lobby after putting their form up, and then they'd be called in for their interview. And that's when an officer would, state their name and then take them back to their office.
What is in that interview?
The interview is all about whether they're legally eligible to adjust status to that of a permanent resident.
Okay.
So it's going to generally, almost all immigration interviews start by having the applicant being put under oath.
Okay.
Because it's extremely important that when you're in an immigration interview, that everything that you say is the truth, because it's a documented event, you're under oath, and false testimony can lead to your application being denied. It can also lead to criminal prosecution.
Is that interview all your office does for that particular application, or there is some other stuff or some other steps involved?
Oh, there are a number of steps involved in the process here at the Omaha field office. We receive the application, send out the interview notice. The officers review the files prior to the interview so that they know the subject's immigration history. And then the interview process takes place, and then the applicant may receive another request for evidence if something was incomplete or something comes up in the interview that makes us want to review an additional document that the applicant might have. Generally, a very generous period of time that they have to return the evidence. But if it's an incomplete form, sometimes the application can be denied at the service center.
How do you assign to an officer? Is that any criteria, or is just random?
Yeah.
The officer that will interview me, for
Okay.
example.
Well, we have so many interviews to complete in a business day, and we divide those interviews up amongst the officers that we've already scheduled, the officers that we have on duty that day. We bundle the interviews that they'll have for the day, and those officers are assigned and can review them ahead of time before they interview. And so there's really no way that we assign them to a particular officer.
Okay.
I mean, they just get bundled.
When the officer receives the application, is there a checklist that you have to cross? Like this form needs to be in the application, vaccination, the background check?
Yes, we have a number of check sheets for just the general things that need to consist in the application.
And after the interview, let's say it goes well, nothing is missing, what happens after that?
Sometimes if the subject is clearly admissible and the security checks have been completed, they may be told right after their interview, you've been approved, you'll be receiving notification in mail. Other times you may not get that, that you've been approved, but you still may receive an approval notice in the mail later on.
Okay.
Or you may, if we need more evidence, we'll probably tell you, this is a request for evidence, this is what we need to see, you have so many days to complete that, and hand that to the applicant at the end of the interview. However, if after the interview we realize that more evidence is needed, we may send that through the mail. And It's very important, during the entire process of applying for adjustment of status, that you update your address with us. In years past, you had to actually mail your change of address in, but now you can do it right at our website. AR11 change of address. There's an actual PDF card that you can fill out, or you can file online. So if you were to click on that, it would want your name and probably information, and then what your new address is.
Okay.
And then we would get that. And it's actually a legal requirement of all non-U.S. citizens to register their address with the United States government while you're living here. And the reason that it's crucial, especially while you have
Yes.
pending applications,
Yeah.
is if we send that request for evidence to your old address and we don't know about your new address, your application could be denied because you did not respond to the request for evidence.
Okay. Do you have access to the case after you send it to a center, a service center for consideration?
Yes and no. After you file an application, a packet, within maybe 3 or 4 weeks, you will be issued a receipt notice that will reflect a receipt number that you can then enter in a website online to get some very basic information about the status of your application. Confirm that it has been received, find out whether it's before an adjudicator, eventually find out that a green card is being issued, but there's very minimal information provided on that website, just the most general level information.
Unfortunately, the I-45 is not there yet, but it will be in the future. So it can be, you can't really watch your progress online like you can with the naturalization application and other applications that are already filed online. But the best way to keep track of your case, if you're wondering about it, is to call our 1-800 number. You will speak to an immigration officer who can check on your case. If they can't help you, or if your issue requires further assistance, they might refer you to an InfoPass appointment at the field office, where you actually get to come in and talk face-to-face to an immigration officer.
Okay, like your
Yes.
office right here. Okay, estimated processing time. How do you reach to that estimation?
On the USCIS website, you can look at cycle times for all the field offices and service centers, and it goes by application type. And the processing time for Omaha is 10.5 months to 22.5 months for a 485 right now. That's determined by the length of time for all applications. So it's
for your applications here in
but
Omaha,
that's
right?
from the time that they're filed at the service center and received and receipted in to the time of final adjudication.
Okay, so it's not when it arrives here in Omaha, but from the very first day that hits.
It can be
that.
misleading. The files, generally after they arrive in Omaha, we get them scheduled, get them interviewed. But then, there are cases that do have issues, that need more clarification and legal review. So there are some that take much longer.
They can be quite lengthier. So an asylum applicant, for example, may affirmatively apply for asylum and wait to be interviewed. If the application isn't approved or interviewed, it's then referred to immigration court. And someone may have a pending asylum application for decades before it's approved, and then have to wait another year before they can apply to adjust their status.
So another extremely long road to becoming a resident would be an individual who obtains what's called a U visa, a temporary visa, based on having been the victim of a violent crime in the United States, perhaps a domestic violence crime or sexual assault, and having assisted law enforcement in the investigation or prosecution of that crime. By law, the government can only grant 10,000 U visa applications per year. And right now there are 135,000 something-ish pending applications. So for somebody who files today, that's an estimated wait of 11 years. If the application is approved, the person will get the U visa, and then they need to wait an additional 3 years in U visa status before applying to adjust to become a lawful permanent resident.
The visa availability for certain adjustment of status applications, the priority date, or that which is typically the same as the receipt date Anna talked about, can move after a cap's been met, right? And so if that priority date regresses, and you could apply now, the application hasn't been adjudicated yet, and a month from now that date regresses, well, there's no longer a visa available, so your application's not going to be adjudicated.
for this year is going to have to wait for next year, right?
Or maybe next month.
Or next
So
month, okay.
the National Visa Center publishes a visa bulletin that changes every single month.
When we started talking about the website and you were explaining, you specified there that there are two ways of applying for green cards. One is through the State Department and one is through USCIS, depending where you are. Is the process similar, or State Department has a different process of applying for a green card?
The State Department and USCIS use the same body of laws to adjudicate those cases. But because of the person's location, jurisdictional issues between the agencies are there, where the State Department handles people who are overseas somewhat, and then we handle people who are internal to the United States.
Okay. It's all clear to me, but if I remember it correctly, I am a resident of Omaha and I became a U.S. citizen now through your office. And I remember that there were fingerprints involved in the process.
Yes. When we were talking about the application being at one of the service centers or the National Benefit Center, generally one of the things that they'll do is they'll send out an appointment notice.
Okay.
To appear at an application support center, which is actually right here in the Omaha field office.
Okay.
So you get a notice of a biometrics appointment, and then you'll take that notice, you bring it here, you'll be fingerprinted, photographed, they'll verify your identification, and that's part of the process of doing the background checks.
Okay.
And then that information is sent back to the service center and is vetted before it comes to the field office.
Now, before I move to the citizenship, I have only one question out of curiosity. Why it is called green card? Mine wasn't green, it was white with a shade of green in it. Why is it called green card? Do you know that?
I think it's literally because of that shade of green.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I obtained my green card. How soon can I apply for the citizenship?
So typically 5 years after obtaining
5
your
years.
green card. There are a couple of caveats. If you are a refugee or an asylee, your green card status, your lawful permanent resident status will be backdated. So for asylees and refugees, it may be a bit before the 5-year mark. If you got your green card through marriage to a US citizen, it could be 3 years.
3 years. And the main difference between being a permanent resident and a citizen of the United States, what is the main difference there?
Lots of difference. One difference could be a U.S. citizen can vote.
Yes.
That's a big difference,
Okay.
right?
Green card holders, lawful permanent residents, right, although it's called permanent, can be placed into removal proceedings if they commit or are convicted of certain crimes, if there's a finding that they obtained their residency through fraud or an allegation, a belief. They can also have their residency revoked for abandonment if they spend extended periods outside the United States. Immigration could assert that they have abandoned their residency,
Okay.
whereas a U.S. citizen should, in all circumstances, be able to travel freely in and out of the United
Of the
States,
United States.
and be able to spend extended periods of time outside of the country without risking losing citizenship.
And if we can mention quickly, is there a waiting process between your application for citizenship and granting the citizenship?
Yes.
I've noticed that varies. In my conversations with my fellow immigrants, I've noticed that varies. What is an average time?
So in the last couple of years, the average wait time has dramatically increased. 5 years ago, the wait time probably would have been 4 to 6 months. Now it looks more like, I think the last time I looked, it said 12 and a half to 17 and a half months. And that may be because of a huge uptick in naturalization applicants.
Okay, and I understand that there is a waiting period of 5 years or 3 years, or there are different categories, the waiting time there. But in my case, it was 5 years, and then I went through another process to become a naturalized U.S. citizen. In your opinion, is this more strict or more complicated than the green card?
Well, naturalization is the highest benefit that the U.S. government can bestow upon a foreign national. Not to say that adjustment of status isn't a very important phase in this journey, But naturalization does have some of the highest standards. In naturalization, in adjustment of status, you don't have to take a test, a civics test or an English test, but in naturalization, you actually have to go through those tests. You have to show that you are a person of good moral character. You have to, a lot of issues can come up in naturalization that don't always come up in adjustment. You do have to study, and you know, we don't give citizenship to everybody. You have to study and work hard to achieve that.
I understand that you're an officer, but you're a human being at the same time. Have there been situations when it was tough for you to make a decision?
Yes, I mean, you know, I can remember my earliest times in immigration working at the border, and you know, having to send people back is never a good situation. So, yeah, it's hard, but you know, you take an oath and you have to do your job. So.
You and each of you hereby declare on oath that you absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty of whom or which you have heretofore been a subject or citizen. That you will support and defend the Constitution and the law of the United States of America.
You have pledged allegiance to America, and when you give your love and loyalty to America, she returns her love and loyalty to you.
While you certainly benefit individually from today, we as a nation have become better and more complete because you have joined us.
What do you feel when your client goes all the way and becomes a U.S. citizen?
It can be very emotional, particularly if you've been working with the client for an extended period of time. Maybe they were a U visa client and it's been a almost 20-year path.
It can be perhaps what keeps you going. I mean, we've talked about the complexity of the immigration legal system, and it's not unusual to have to tell people over and over again, there's nothing I can do for you. And to sort of have that to sort of offset or balance the struggle with being an immigration practitioner really helps and kind of keeps you going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can remember, people almost like crushing my hand. They're so happy, and it's always the little guy that you wouldn't expect it from that does that. And I've had people give me bear hugs and people who would just come up crying because they're so happy. So being happy for them in their special day and, seeing how much it means to them is the best part of my job.
On behalf of United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, as well as Metropolitan Community College, I would ask all of our friends, family, and visitors to please welcome the 31 newest citizens of the United States.
Yeah, I'm from Iraq, and now today we become also from United States. Yeah, thank you.
This was America with an Accent for this week. Next time, lawyers Diara Godinez and Anna Deal will help us cover the saga of undocumented individuals in the United States. Thank you for watching. I am Enkela Vebil.